Alright, so this video is on wobble and grip with a lot of information from all the tests I've done with the TechDisc and grip. I've done a lot of testing of different changes to the grip. So I'm kind of trying to collect all my thoughts and bring it all together in this video. And by the way, if you're interested in getting a TechDisc, I have in the description below an affiliate link. And while you're down there, links to other things. If you want a form review, I'm on Formero now, that's linked there. If you want to join a Discord server I set up, talk about form, you can join that. All right, so the wobble breakthrough came from revisiting Aaron Gossage's grip. I'm calling it the Goose grip, and then specifically modifying it, which the modification I'm calling a Super Goose grip. Now, right away, big warning, there are some serious downsides, I think, to this grip. Particularly, it's more strenuous on the middle finger because the middle finger is responsible for much more of the grip power. And so if your middle finger is not used to this, you can very easily injure your middle finger, and finger injuries are no joke. They will take you out of the game for a long time. So be very careful if you try any of this to not power up too quickly. You need to give your fingers a chance to condition for this. But it's also not super practical, maybe, because it did feel a little bit harder to get high power, although I don't feel like overall I was totally limited in power. I did hit some good power. So the goal is trying to learn from this, why it gave me lower wobble, and see if I can figure out how to take that learning and somehow figure out how to apply it to my more ideal grip for full power and less strain on the fingers. Also, if you're already using a grip that's commonly used and is recognized as a good grip, then it's probably a bigger priority than trying some exotic grip like this to focus on improving your swing plane and other big issues. And if you do experiment with your grip, probably focus on trying other common grips that are recognized as good and are more common than weird grips like this. All right, so now that I gave that warning, let me show you what the grip looks like. So first of all, I'm trying to align the disc roughly from here, mostly through the middle of the palm. So that's how we start it. Then secondly, putting the middle finger mostly along the rim here and a little bit on the flight plate as well. And then bring the index finger around. So then it looks like this. That's the Gossage, the Aaron Gossage grip, the Goose grip I'm calling it. So the Goose grip did give me consistently lower wobble, but it was pretty apparent that it was harder to get a full secure grip, and it felt more, quite a bit more strenuous on the middle finger without having any other support. So I was trying to think, how can I kind of preserve the fact that when the other fingers aren't there, the middle finger can get like a long amount of contact with the rim and is slightly on the flight plate as well. How could I preserve that but get more support? So that's where the idea of the Super Goose grip came in. You start with the Goose grip, and then you stack directly on top the ring finger, on top of the middle finger, to reinforce it. So the middle finger now is preserved, it's kind of positioning, but it gets added support as well.
The ring finger is not actually directly on top of the middle finger. I'm actually trying to hook it all the way over to the far side of the middle finger so that my ring finger feels like it's pressing down on the left side of my middle finger because it feels more secure that way. If it's straight on top of the middle finger, it feels like it can slide off more easily, but when I get it onto the side of the middle finger that's closest or deepest into the rim, closest to the flight plate, it feels like it can kind of hook in and like really lock in more firmly.
So that's different than if I were to do a 3-finger grip with it stacked in the normal way, where the middle finger gets slightly stacked onto the ring finger, and the ring finger kind of takes some of the space, competes for the space with the middle finger. So now the middle finger doesn't get access to this space here. So the Super Goose grip, interestingly, helped me get even lower wobble more consistently, but also seemed to help me get more power and a little bit less strenuous on the middle finger since it had the support, but still a lot more strenuous on the middle finger than a 4-finger power grip. Interestingly, I tried the Goose grip a long time ago, and I don't remember it having such a dramatic reduction in my wobble. So I must have been doing something different back then. My swing plane definitely wasn't as good, but I tried to break the low wobble I was getting today by intentionally changing my swing plane. And I had some throws that looked like, I got more elbow dip. It didn't look as good, and I was still getting lower wobble with various different swing styles. So it held up consistently today, and I'll show the throws soon. All right, so let me give a little more context leading up to why I started retesting this and going back down the wobble rabbit hole. So getting interested in wobble again, I mean, I've always been interested in it, but focusing on it again started because Ricky Wysocki came out recently with a video throwing the TechDisc at the TechDisc headquarters, and in that video, he was throwing consistently below 2 wobble, which is insanely low. And I've never seen anybody do it back to back to back to back, and also at their medium speed and their higher speed as well. Now, there are pros who have TechDisc stats with really low wobble, like below 2, such as Garrett Gurthie and a few others, but either it was only a few throws or it wasn't back to back to back, it seemed like. So this is probably pretty rare even among top pros. So right after watching the Ricky TechDisc video, I started messing around with my TechDisc, just doing really soft, like throwing form, but really soft, and with a manual release, like opening my hand, because I was indoors, so that's all I could do. And just trying to see if I can figure anything out to get lower wobble more consistently. And I started noticing that taking my pinky off seemed to be helping, and then in particular going down to a Goose grip was consistently easier, but it's still really hard when you're throwing softly because the disc doesn't have enough speed to kind of want to come out all at once. So I then thought, okay, next time I play, I'm gonna mess around with the Goose grip and try some harder throws with it next time I throw the TechDisc. Also, Ricky calls his normal grip a fan grip, but I really don't like using that term because it confuses people. It's like, oh, how can he throw so hard with a fan grip? Well, it's because it feels nothing like a fan grip for putting. The fingers are pulled in tightly towards the rim still, but some of them are touching the flight plate still, and he's not even doing a modified fan grip where the middle fingers are out further. So I still think of it as a type of power grip, and I think about it more as, it's a power grip where you can have these joints like this, where it's curled into the rim, or these joints, the dip joints like this, and when they're like this, they're usually partially on the flight plate. Or I might refer to it as a stacked power grip, because usually when you have the fingers partially on the flight plate, you get some stacking of the fingers, which I'll show here.
So from this camera angle, it looks very convincing that his middle finger is not stacked at all on the ring finger, but I think there's a decent likelihood that there's a small stacking going on because it just happens very naturally in this type of grip, and it's very hard to see from certain camera angles. However, it's possible that there's no stacking on the from the middle finger onto the ring finger.
Funny enough, his typical grip looks almost exactly like my default grip, but my default grip averages like 6 degrees of wobble. I have gotten extremely low wobble on it before, but usually it's like 1 out of 100 throws, and very rarely out of thousands of throws back to back below 2 wobble. So not consistently low wobble. However, Ricky, with both of his grips that he tested, which by the way, that his fan grip, stacked power grip, whatever you want to call it, outperformed in basically every stat, including spin, to his power grip, which was contrary to what he expected. So the next time I threw, I was playing on the course and recording my throws, trying to work on my form, and I got kind of bored and decided to mess around with stuff, and then decided to try doing the Gossage grip while throwing a putter, where for me it's even harder to get low wobble when driving with a putter or a mid-range. And then I noticed the releases in slow-mo, which sometimes in regular speed it looks like you got low wobble, but then in slow-mo you see, oh, it wobbles and then stabilizes from the spin. So then I was like, okay, after this round's over, I'm gonna pull out the TechDisc and try to do more throws. But I continued on the course experimenting with it, and then that's when I was feeling, it was kind of hard. Sometimes it felt like I was not getting full power, felt like it was slipping out a little early, so that's when I came up with the idea to do the Super Goose grip, stacking the ring finger on top of the middle finger, and it was feeling really good, surprisingly, even on putters, where, like, with the rim being like thinner, it doesn't have that thickness. It's always feels more like necessary to have either more fingers or out a little bit onto the flight plate to help support the disc. So I was expecting this is like kind of like a difficult challenge for like a Gossage style grip or the Super Goose grip. It's like, if I could do this with a putter, then get good power, good release, and it doesn't totally screw up my ability to hold the disc up and support it, then that's a really good sign. So I'll show those throws on the course where I'm kind of realizing, this is interesting, and then I'll show the TechDisc throws and then do a deep dive after on kind of some theorizing. Can you goose a putter? Definitely doesn't feel as comfortable as a driver. I'm trying to go under this branch here. Oh, this is a Watt, by the way. How about this? Did I invent a new grip? Start out with the Goose grip and then stack the ring finger on the middle finger, the Super Goose. I called the first one the Goose grip because Aaron Gossage, that's his grip. I don't know if he does it on putters when throwing putters, though. We're gonna find out how this one works. It's in the circle on the OB island.
In this throw, I decided to try to crank it more nose down to see if it would still be low wobble. In this throw, I was trying what I call an ER, IR, ER shoulder rotation pattern, which means it feels like I'm externally rotating more in the reach back and then internally rotating into the pocket and then externally rotating out of the pocket, or in other words, feeling like I'm turning it out of a briefcase more in the reach back and then trying to turn it into a briefcase into the pocket and then out of briefcase out of the pocket, instead of just reaching back fully on briefcase and hoping it kind of carries into the pocket a little bit to help with the internal rotation in the pocket. I didn't successfully exaggerate it as much as I was trying to, which would result in seeing the briefcase orientation change more dramatically. So it doesn't look very obviously different than the other throws, but it definitely felt different. So I wanted to see if that would affect the wobble. I wasn't sure if it was limiting my power or if I was just tired from already playing. So I started trying to really power up to see if it was limiting my power or not. And you can see it increased my wobble, which is not surprising because closer to max power, I'm not as controlled. This is within 3 miles per hour of my max ever, so probably is not limiting my power much, but would need more testing to see. The problem is it's still hard for me to get above 67. It takes a lot of throws usually, so there's no easy way to find out if I can still do that with this grip or not. I think I was trying the ER pattern here, where I externally rotate more in the reach back and then undo that into the pocket to internal rotation, then back to external rotation of the shoulder, and accidentally cranked it super nose down. After this, my phone died, but it felt like I could have kept throwing below 2 wobble. Alright, here are the throw stats from this session. There's only 2 throws with the regular Goose grip though, because I was just losing interest in it, feeling pretty clearly that the Super Goose was better in pretty much every way, it felt like, so I wanted to focus on that. This is the next day, checking to see if the low wobble results are reproducible with the Super Goose grip. These throws were not all back-to-back, but it didn't take many throws to get low wobble with the Super Goose grip again. I was also kind of messing with some other stuff in between the throws. wobble stats replicated on the second day trying it, but the session was cut short because I forgot to charge my TechDisc, so I decided to do a third day and mess around with some other stuff as well on the third day, like trying to break the low wobble with this grip by changing my swing plane more dramatically, and trying some other 3-finger grip variations to see how their wobble compares. Here's a larger set of the Super Goose throws from the 3 days, all of them from day 1 and a large majority of them from the other 2 days. I only excluded a small handful of throws where there was a random early release, or I just randomly totally screwed up something in the throw or the timing that I couldn't blame on the grip because it wasn't happening any more often than usual. Here are other grips I tested and their stats. I'm not including all the throws because the video would be too long. Pause the video if you want to look for longer.
All right, time for a deep dive discussion on wobble and grip. So my first thought about why this is improving my wobble was, maybe earlier when I tried it a long time ago, my swing plane was too messed up, and now my swing plane is a little bit better. And then furthermore, maybe this grip style is helping me swing more on plane than usual because of like proprioception, which is like the awareness of your body and the position it's in, stuff like that. And the reason I thought that maybe is because when the middle finger has the room, it can have like a very long lengthwise contact with the rim of the disc, and having one finger have a lot of that contact with the rim maybe helps me feel the proprioception, feel the plane of the disc more clearly, and align my swing and the plane of the disc better as a consequence, because the disc is like an extension of your arm when you're holding it, and so the way you grip it can affect how you are tempted to swing. However, and also with the Super Goose grip, it still retains this characteristic of the middle finger having a lot of lengthwise contact along the matching, like almost parallel as you can get one finger with the rim of the disc. I'm just stacking this other finger on top, so the middle finger is still primarily the one I'm feeling the disc orientation with. However, I challenged this hypothesis by changing my swing in multiple different ways, and even intentionally elbow dipping, and I still was getting it was still pretty easy to get below 2 degrees wobble on most of these, on all of those changes to my swing. So that makes me then think, well, it must not be my swing plane. Although the one caveat there is your swing plane can do so many different things, and as long as you get it smooth at the end into the hit, you can have a smooth finish to your throw. So there's still that possibility of it somehow making that part of my throw smoother, the last moments. But more likely, I think now that it's just the disc is able to rip out more cleanly with both the Goose grip and the Super Goose grip. The Super Goose grip just gives me extra grip power, so it doesn't slip out early as often. But yeah, I think you can also see, like, I'm not gonna put the ring finger on top so that you can see like as I pull and rotate the disc out, like
it seems like as the grip fails and this finger starts to get peeled open, that action is simply more aligned with the rim of the disc, since the finger is more aligned in the grip along the rim for a longer length compared to other grips where the fingers are having to come in at an angle more against the rim instead of with the rim. Here's a picture to illustrate the two grips with the lowest average wobble in my testing. The 1.8 wobble and the 3.7 wobble look to me like the last finger contacting the rim especially is better aligned with the rim. Now comparing the first grip here, the 4.3 average wobble, with the third grip, which is my normal grip, 6.5 average wobble, you can see the difference in how the ring finger especially is aligned with the rim. Now I was trying to keep my normal grip as much as I could and then just stack that pinky, but in order for there to be space for that pinky and for it to reach, it kind of results in the middle finger not being as stacked on the ring finger, and then the ring finger slides into the space that's now available from the pinky not being there, which allows the ring finger to get more aligned with the rim. Also, with my normal grip, the 6.5 average wobble one, you can see that the pinky is the least aligned with the rim, just based on where it's located on the hand. It has to come in at that angle more than the other fingers do, and I think that is a source of extra wobble because the disc can't rip out as cleanly on that plane of rotation. Comparing the second grip, 6.3 average wobble, to the second to last grip, 3.7 average wobble, they're both three finger grips with dip joint extension. The difference is the second grip I'm stacking the middle finger on the ring finger, and the second to last grip I'm trying to not do that, and that results in the ring finger, more importantly the last finger touching the rim, to be more aligned with the rim. In the first grip, even though the pinky is used, it's not the one that's actually the last finger contacting the rim, so I think it causes less of an issue. Similarly, with the Super Goose grip, the ring finger is stacked on the middle finger, and the middle finger is the one that is the true last point of contact, which is the first point of failure, which means it's the most important to be secure for a strong grip. And since it's the first point of failure, if that failure allows the disc to start ripping out more cleanly on the axis of rotation, that probably helps with the wobble, even though it's not the final point of contact. Now I saved the exception for last, which is the last grip, the typical four-finger curled power grip, dip joint flexion. That has lower wobble compared to my normal grip, the 6.5 wobble average one, but it doesn't look like the last grip has a better alignment with the fingers into the rim. So I'm not sure why I get lower wobble with it, but I also get lower speed with it on average, so it feels like I can't properly put it to the test to see how the wobble is at my higher speeds. And I'm not sure why I get lower speed with it, because my fingers are actually quite strong in this position from climbing, but it does feel like the disc rips out a little bit too easily. But there are plenty of pros who throw really hard with this grip, so there's got to be something I'm missing. Another hypothesis for why the Goose grip and Super Goose grip gave me lower wobble, that Blitz DG came up with, is if you look at that grip with the 1.8 average wobble, you can see the distance between my index fingertip and my middle fingertip on the rim is pretty large distance. That's the distance between the first point of failure and the final point of contact. And so with more distance there, the disc has more time as it's ripping out between that first point of failure and final point of contact to kind of resolve the wobble as it's spinning and come out more smoothly. Back to Ricky for a moment. Something I mentioned earlier about his grip at release. We can see his pinky is extended, but his middle two fingers are into the palm. Whereas AB, all of his fingers are into the palm, which is what you normally see when all of the fingers are being used with like full grip pressure. So this could be just a quirk where Ricky, once the disc rips off his pinky, he likes to extend it, but typically it's pretty hard to avoid the automatic snapping of the pinky into your palm if you're gripping fully with it. So perhaps Ricky starts with his pinky on the disc, but isn't really using it as the first line of defense. Maybe it's his ring finger that really is the true first line of defense, and the pinky just kind of slides off. This would be pretty interesting if it's the case, since it seems to me like the pinky is somewhat problematic for myself in my testing. It's not that uncommon actually for pros to remove their pinky. Right here, Isaac's pinky is on, and now it's off. However, I've never seen this happening in Ricky's throw, but it does take a rare camera angle and good quality to see it if it does happen. Simon seems to do it too, and maybe many others. I'm assuming it's either because the pinky doesn't have very much reach, or they feel it's not as strong, or maybe they intuitively learned that they get a cleaner release if they take it off. And I'm sure some of them were even surprised when they first saw a clear view of it.
So the extreme version of the fingers not coming in aligned with the rim is a grip, like this, which is very uncommon for this reason, I think. It's very hard for the disc to kind of spin out cleanly like this when the fingers are completely perpendicular to the rim. Also, the way it forces you to hold the disc, my wrist flexion and extension are no longer spinning the disc. You got to spin it more like this. It's just very awkward. You can pour the tea a little bit to help, but yeah. And whenever I've tried gripping it kind of like this with exaggeration, just for fun to see what happens, I consistently get very, very high wobble. So hand size, probably another factor. My hands are, I don't know, probably just like medium. Ricky's probably quite a bit bigger than me, so his pinky's got probably, decent bit extra length than mine. Maybe that helps. But I might also just switch to like a 3-finger power grip, where it's not like one of the Goose or the Super Goose, but it is one that I get slightly better wobble with, and I've been able to get high power with. So maybe it's a best of both worlds type of situation. I don't know, I'm considering it. However, wobble on the backhand, as long as you've got decent spin, is not super important, I guess. If you're already like 6 or below, maybe even 8 and below. So at this point, for me though, it's just like, if I can get similar speeds and spin and angle control, which kind of seems so far I can with a 3-finger power grip, but I also get less wobble on average, why not? So another factor with wobble, I think, is the alignment of the disc through your hand. I think the most ideal is through the middle finger and down the middle of the palm, because that is as perfectly as you can align it with your forearm as possible, and your forearm is swinging open on the swing plane, and so the disc can be perfectly aligned. However, the problem with that is, with 12 speeds especially, I can't reach my index finger around if I keep the disc aligned there. And so most people are unlikely to align the disc like that, but also having the disc aligned there will make the fingers, it's related to the angle of the fingers coming in the rim, will make the fingers able to come in more aligned with the rim, whereas having the alignment going more, which is more typical, slightly diagonal from here to here, is changing the angle of the fingers, and furthermore, more diagonal that way is making the fingers have to come in even more at that kind of closer to that perpendicular angle. I can still get low wobble with this kind of alignment, like from here to here. Haven't experimented as much with it. Like, for example, if I try to do a super Goose grip, but with that alignment, haven't done a lot of experimenting with it. I suspect I'll still get lower wobble than average, but maybe not as low. So since the alignment is slightly not ideal, I think, in the kind of like what I think is a standard alignment that most people use from here to here, there's a slight diagonal. So you can see that you're getting, with that slight diagonal, if I make it more extreme, you can see that my wrist flexion and extension are not aligned with spinning the disc anymore. And this is where something that pour the coffee or pour the tea has a interaction with, that a lot of people, I've never heard anybody talk about it really. If wrist flexion extension, you see, is not really spinning the disc very well. It's kind of, flopping it like this. But if I pour the tea a lot, now wrist flexion and extension can resolve some of that misalignment. So even in the standard alignment, where there's not very much misalignment, I think that's more the purpose of pour the coffee, is it helps align it slightly better. But also, if you simply just look at your wrist here and you curl it, it wants to go towards pour the coffee side owner deviation naturally, in order to curl as much as you can. So if you're using the standard alignment from here to here, I don't think you really need to try to pour the coffee if you just focus on getting good wrist curl, which is already good for spin and just the power pocket position. It'll automatically give you that pour the coffee. However, if you're using an alignment that's more towards this direction, this kind of steeper diagonal, then you'll probably have to focus more, pouring the tea more, in order to get that smooth wrist flexion extension, spinning the disc. And because I talked about pour the coffee, the question's going to come up, oh, isn't it for nose down? No, I think basically that's just wrong, like old head theory. Everybody somehow makes the same mistake where they're like, look, it's nose down. And it's like, well, yeah, you're not throwing, you don't throw this way, right? You're standing sideways to the target when you throw. And the release is around like 10:30, 11 o'clock-ish. So if I pivot the disc out until the final point of contact, and I'm throwing this way, and I put my arm out towards this 10 to 11 o'clock, you can see that pour the coffee is, if anything, adding hyzer. But like I said, that's not the main point, is to get the disc alignment for the wrist plane. And you can see here that if I'm throwing this way, external rotation and supination of the forearm is clearly nose down, and that's how I can throw -20 nose down with a high launch angle, is by doing that. And then the opposite, internal rotation and pronation of the forearm, is nose up, because we're swinging this way, throwing this way. And you might think, oh, external rotation, isn't that bad? In the pocket, yeah, it's bad because you're collapsing your pocket. But once you've passed the pocket and you're coming out, now your elbow's extending and it's no longer an issue. You've passed your pocket successfully, hopefully with a good pocket. Now it's no longer a problem, and it starts affecting nose angle. And then caveat warning with that, this motion to get it nose down, called turn the key. If you've never done it before, don't crank it too hard. You can hurt yourself by straining yourself when you're not used to that motion, especially in the elbow. So you got to condition it, and probably better to prioritize other things first like your swing plane, because you can throw with a funky swing plane and do that and get a lot of nose down, but if your swing plane's all messed up, you're still gonna have to work on your swing plane anyways to improve it. So might as well do that first. All right, so what about other sources of wobble? Because even if you're able to achieve like the perfect grip that has the best alignment of the disc and finger, alignment with the rim, so that it rips out cleanly, you can still get wobble. So it must come then from the swing plane, right? But mostly I think it comes from two places: the shoulder rotation and the forearm rotation. So forearm rotation, right, you can see the disc can flap around like this, and shoulder rotation with the arm lifting and lowering, so the elbow particularly. External rotation typically drives the elbow down, internal rotation typically brings it up, and you can see external rotation makes the disc tilt with the elbow drop, makes the disc tilt more like this, kind of anti-briefcase, where internal rotation is more likely to tilt it more towards briefcase. You can then, even though it's on briefcase here, I could independently change my forearm rotation to take it out of briefcase. Anyways, they often kind of go together. External rotation goes like this, and then supination like that, pronation, and internal rotation. So your body kind of wants to do them together. So if that's in your swing, which it's in everybody's swing to some degree, some of that motion, you can get low wobble while having some back and forth motion in that arm rotation. It just has to smoothly resolve into the hit with enough time to resolve and smoothen out as you're approaching the hit. If it happens too abruptly and you're trying to correct it into the hit and there's too much jerkiness, then you're going to add wobble. But you can, for example, come from a lot of briefcase, come out of
the pocket,
and crank it over out of briefcase into extreme nose down with low wobble, which I've done before to like negative 15 degrees nose down and very low wobble. But the only reason it's possible is because it's happening progressively on the way out of the hit, and the wrist is uncurling like with that happening, so that the disc is spinning out and it's all kind of resolving smoothly. And then Coach Chris Taylor, a really prominent coach in disc golf, who's done research, like actual research, he says that it's from a mismatch of grip pressure on top and underneath. But that doesn't answer all of the other things I've talked about, like the alignment of the disc in the hand, the alignment of the fingers and the rim in relation to the rim, and the rotation of the arm causing, this motion.
So Coach Chris probably was including this in his explanation, because on the way out of the pocket, if you are rotating your arm so that your palm is turning up, you can see that your fingers are kind of rotating up as well. So you can feel that on the disc as pressure coming up under the disc, and the opposite you feel as pressure going down on top of the disc, like through your thumb. However, you can do that to a large degree where it feels the pressure is pretty uneven, and get low wobble. It just has to be done in a non-jerky way, kind of progressively.
So to me, I mean, it just seems common sense that is an issue that can cause wobble, but it's not the whole answer, of course, and even still, I think it's doesn't answer other things about grip. Like, for example, if I put my thumb really deep here, this is where the thumb is pressing. There's nothing underneath now to meet the pressure of my thumb. So even if I have equal pressure on top and on bottom, is it equal? I don't know. What is the the definition of equal, right? If the amount of pressure is equal, but there's nothing supporting that thumb pressure underneath, then it's an imbalance. It's not balanced. But I think you can still throw low wobble like that. I've done it before. The thumb can be more in here, where its pressure is met by the index finger underneath. These fingers can be fanned out deeper into the rim. Now they're pressing right here with nothing on top to meet that pressure. So even if the amount of pressure they're applying is, roughly equal to the amount of pressure on top here, they're not balancing each other out. So yeah, I don't think that is a huge factor unless it's like just really off in your grip. But I do think it's worth it. And I think about this when I'm changing my grip pressure for, lower powered shots and higher powered shots. If I increase my grip pressure with my fingers, I'm also increasing it with my thumb in equal parts is what it feels like. Oh, finally made it to hole 18. I think I covered everything I was planning to talk about. Hopefully it's not too long, but I like getting into things, so hopefully you do too. Thanks for watching. That's my actual putter. Hope it's okay.